So 2003 happened to be one of the most monumental and life-altering years of my entire 46 years now here on Earth. It was a culmination of so many years of hard work, and everything that I had ever wanted was about to come to fruition. The band that I was in had gone from dive bars to festivals to opening up for Incubus, Dashboard Confessional, System of a Down, POD, in a matter of what felt like overnight. We were on billboards all over Philadelphia. We were on the radio every day. We had national airplay. And my band was on the cusp of signing a record deal with a major label. We had performed for multiple major labels, and we were deciding who we were going to go with. And there was even another label out in LA that was interested in me as a solo artist as well. At the same time, I had just had my first solo art gallery showing for my paintings. My bodybuilding coaching and recovery coaching was taking off. I coached my first major competitor to a championship. 2003 was just such a huge year for me. I had worked so hard to go from, a 120-pound twig to a 185-pound model that was getting work over and over, and it felt like I just had life lined up. And then within a matter of weeks, I lost everything. Everything. And I was given 5 weeks left to live. I lost 50 pounds like that because I couldn't eat or drink. All my organs failed. My organs shut off. I was diagnosed with organ failure and a rare autoimmune deficiency, they said, because they couldn't figure out what else it was. I was then diagnosed with Crohn's disease and all these other things. It's like they were just throwing darts at a dartboard because no one could figure out what was actually wrong with me. I had to leave the music industry. I couldn't model because I was losing my hair, losing my nails, and I lost 50 pounds of body weight. I was house-ridden. I was bedridden, and I had IVs in both arms. I was living off of a saline drip and a morphine drip. And between 2003, being told I had 5 weeks left to live, and 2004, I got my life back. And that is a very long and emotional story, which I'll save for another time. But as I was getting my life back, I couldn't go back to where I was. Life would never be the same. I could never go back to what I left or where I left off. So I had to rewrite my entire life. Fortunately, I was still able to be a bodybuilding and addiction recovery coach because I had built up a good network. I had a good rapport with people, and I had experience. And nothing trumps experience. But I had to rewrite my direction because I couldn't perform anymore. I couldn't perform on stage. I was too ill and frail. Even though I was gaining health back, I wasn't healthy. I couldn't go into the studio as an engineer and a producer and track other bands anymore because I was still mostly house-ridden. So one day, my adopted father, which is also another long, drawn-out story I'll save for another time, but my adopted father came over and said, "Where do we go from here?" And because of my love for modeling and being in front of the camera and painting and creating art, and especially as a musician, my whole life as an artist, producer, and engineer, there was just something in me that clicked, and I said, I want to be a photographer. And I knew from that day on, I wanted to be a photographer, and I wanted to make film. I didn't know what type of film. I love documentaries, but I didn't know what. So he said to me, "Do you want a camera for Christmas?" And 2004 happened to be the year that Nikon released this. the D70. And this little DSLR not only changed many aspects of photography in the camera world, but it literally saved my life. It brought me my mental health back, along with prayer, meditation, yoga, getting back into the gym and so forth. It took up the space and the time in my mind and in my life that I had lost to depression, anxiety. I had burned so much of my past while I was sick. I literally was living in a townhome from the second floor. I started a bonfire, which I wasn't supposed to do. And from my second floor balcony, I just started throwing all of my art, my paintings, my sketches, many of my songbooks into this bonfire. A lot of the clothes that I performed in, a lot of my custom jeans. I had dozens and dozens of custom made like diesel jeans that I had flared out and patchwork stitched onto them, and I had custom hats made for me. I threw it all into the bonfire, and I burnt up everything that reminded me of my life in the music industry. And I had spent a lot of time between coasts, you know, being from Jersey. I always wanted to go to Cali. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast. And every time I'd go out to California, I'd have something custom made for me because it just became something I did. And one year I had a custom made Gibson Les Paul. You can actually see one of my custom Flying V's in the background. Thank God above I did not burn that one, because that one means more to me than any guitar that I've ever owned. But I had a custom Gibson Les Paul built for me one year. It was all blacked out, ebony black. And I tossed that thing into the fire. Smashed it first. Smashed it on the ground into pieces. I threw in albums and albums of photos, but I just burnt up memories of my life. And so as I decide to venture down this new road of becoming a photographer, I had never had a good camera. I actually never really expressed any interest in photography until that moment anyway, at all. I had been sketching and painting since I was like 8 years old. I'm highly ADHD, plus I have a brain injury now from many concussions, but my mother put me into private art lessons at the age of 8 to try to help calm my ADHD. But I became immersed in art. And one of the pinnacles of being an artist is having your own gallery showing. And I had my first gallery showing in 2003. And I had a very important and very personal piece of art that I had painted, and I chucked that into the bonfire too. And in a way, doing that was somewhat relieving, where I felt like I was throwing my illness into the bonfire. And I've been a coach since the age of 18. I started mentoring troubled youth at 18, 19, and began bodybuilding at 17, and began coaching bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding at 18, and then also began addiction recovery coaching because I found that just about every bodybuilder also had additional addictions. And addiction ran in my family, and I had a lot of experience with addicts and addiction. But you would never think that in a moment like that, at a time like that, an implement, let alone a camera, especially a 6 megapixel camera with one lens, a Nikon 24 to 120, just this. I put it around my neck, and I kept it on me at all times. I was still mostly house ridden, so I would take walks around my neighborhood, which was just a neighborhood of townhomes, not too far from Trenton, New Jersey, where I grew up. And I would just continue to kind of venture out a little further and further. But what that was doing was it was also helping me get my health back. I was walking more. And it was exhausting. And you wouldn't think that having just a little camera hanging off your neck would be even more exhausting, but it felt like I had the weight of the world hanging from my body. But this camera became attached to my body. It became part of me. And the more that I looked at life through this viewfinder and through this lens, the more I saw. And the more I saw, the less I focused on myself and my illness and my ailments and my pain. Because if you've ever had stomach cramps, this doesn't even compare to stomach cramps. It felt like knives were stabbing me from the inside out all day long. And that's why they gave me something so wonderful as a morphine drip. Morphine on demand. Bottles of Dilaudid, bottles of Oxycontin. Hence how I became such a good addiction recovery coach. Because there came a point where I had to get off everything. This Nikon D70 made such an impact on the future direction and all the decisions I would make in my life from that point on. And how much I loved being on this side of the lens. And how I could create anything I wanted. Even with a 6 megapixel camera. But now in 2025, when everybody's talking about going back to DSLRs and 50 megapixels is too much now, where just last year everybody was like, oh, I need 100 megapixels, and everything is what we make of it. 6 megapixels is what you make of it. Just like 100 megapixels is what you make of it. But this tool, this instrument, this implement, this camera gave me a new life. And as crazy as that sounds, this camera helped shape the rest of my future. Because if I had continued in the music industry, if I had signed that record deal, I would have had to move out to LA, and I wouldn't have any of my children. And I'm a single father of 6, and my children are my whole world. And all these years later, I've had all the best camera gear, best video gear. And at the end of the day, none of it is anything other than a tool. A tool to create. A tool to become an artist. But the becoming part is up to us. That's where we get to take control. Regardless of all of the other external factors that get thrown at us from every direction. Being able to control what I put together through this viewfinder, none of it really matters. And there's so many people going out there saying they want that nostalgic look. They want that vintage look. But do they really have a reason why? Is it because it's become popular again? So what I want to encourage everyone out there to do is to always ask yourself the why. Because the why is where we find introspection. Answering the why is really how we find who we are. And now at 46 years old, in 2025, after I have survived many other near-death experiences, which I can share with you at another time, after having a career as a musician, after being a business owner, starting many different companies, being an investor, being in real estate, being a producer, an engineer, a filmmaker, a photographer, a painter. The list goes on and on. Don't ever be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone, to try new things, or to venture down a path that may scare you. Because every day is a blessing. And we never know what tomorrow brings. I'll catch you next video. God willing, I get to make one.
Let's deal.